Okay, so I haven't recorded this process before, so I figured I would do it since I'm recording other processes that I'm doing. I'm mixing and mastering vocals for a song, and I produced the beat, which is up here. I mixed and mastered all that, and then I have all these vocals. Yeah, I guess I'll go through my process and kind of some of the things I'm thinking about when I'm doing this. Okay, so the first thing I'm doing when I'm mixing vocals with a song is I take all of the vocals and I put them into what's called my pre-vocal chain, and then I put that into my vocal chain. If I'm being honest, I could probably combine these into one. Probably get some redundant plugins, as you'll see. But you could probably get a similar effect by putting all of them on one bus. But I have all of these going to my pre-vocal chain, which is then going to my vocal chain. So this is where all the vocals end up coming out. And then I have my beat over here. So the first thing you'll notice is on the buses for the main vocals themselves, there's nothing happening, and that's because I don't want to use a bunch of plugins more than once if I don't have to. So I just take all these and send them to one place, and that's where the majority of my plugins and effects are. The exception to that is for the ad-libs. My ad-libs I put effects on before I send to my pre-vocal chain. And as you can see for my ad-libs, what I like to do is kind of do like a radio effect with the EQ and bring the high end in, bring the low end in, and then just kind of boost this middle a little bit. And if we go to just the ad-libs, this is what it sounds like.
Roll it up, better days.
So it's kind of radio-y. We can make it even more radio-y by bringing these in a little bit.
Roll it up, better days.
Okay, and some of the other effects I have for my ad-libs are this spreader, which I'm hesitant to use this plugin most of the time because it can make your sounds kind of like phasey. It can mess up the phase relationship of the sounds that are going into it. With my ad-libs, I don't really care about that. In fact, that may actually be a desired effect. So in this case, I have the spreader turned on, but for my ad-libs, I've got the spreader and I've got the separation pulled up by quite a bit. I'm also separating it here, and then we're spreading it out. So this is what it sounds like after the effects. So I've got the spreader, I've got a flanger, which has some of the dry signals. It's on default settings, but some of the dry signals being mixed out, and then we've got 75% of the wet signal, so same amount of both. But then I'm mixing that back by close to 80%. So then I have a limiter, which is just kind of compressing the sound down. Well, it's limiting the sound down, but same idea. It's squashing the sound down just to make everything more present, because I want all of my ad-libs to be just as present as each other. I don't want too many dynamics with my ad-libs. To be fair, you could probably get away with not doing this, because once the ad-libs go to the pre-vocal and the vocal chain, they get compressed and limited a little bit as well. So this is probably redundant. But I also have two different delays. The reason I have two different ones is I have the settings on both kind of the same, as you can see, where the volume is kind of at 50%, 49 in this case. The cutoff is close to that as well. The time is left alone. But then on one of them, I have the offset all the way to the right, which means there's like a delay in the right ear. And then on the other one, I have the same thing, but to the left. So my ad-libs are kind of bouncing and ping-ponging back and forth left and right, both from this setting and also from the fact that I have two of them kind of playing at the same time. And they're both mixed almost all the way out. So you're really only going to get a tiny amount of that little delay bounce or whatever. It's almost more like a reverb effect at this point. In this reverb, I've got a little bit of low cutting and high cutting happening. I mean, you can look at these settings if you want and copy them. My dry signal is almost all the way on, but it's only 99%, so it might as well be 100. But that just barely softens up the sound just a little bit. And then I'm adding a little bit of reverb to it itself. So here's what it...
Feeling tough.
Okay, and without all of these effects, it sounds like this.
Roll it up, better days.
So very present, very in your face. And then I put all these effects on it and spread it out, EQ it down, all that stuff.
Roll it up.
And it does that. So it kind of pushes it in the back, makes it kind of sound flangery, which is kind of what I want here, and pushes it out to the sides. So it's all, including the ad-libs, all going to this pre-vocal chain. So let's go ahead and turn this on. Let's listen to that again, but with the pre-vocal chain turned on.
Roll it up, better days.
So you can hear it's a little bit more present.
Roll it up, better days. Roll it up,
A little bit louder.
better days.
Okay, and the reason for that are these settings that I've got. And again, you could probably get away with putting the settings for this and the vocal chain all together on one, but it doesn't really matter as long as you get the sound that you like VSTs and plugins and stuff that I've got. So the first thing I have is a patcher preset, which is called Vocal Writer. And I put this first just to make sure all my vocals are around the volume level, like are at a consistent volume level. Then I have an EQ where I'm just kind of cutting the lows, cutting the highs, and then, you know, I might be cutting a little bit here as well, depending on the vocals coming in. Then I have Pitcher, which is essentially just auto-tune, but I don't have the money to pay for like the actual auto-tune, so I use Pitcher. It gets the job done. And in this case, I'm really not using it a whole lot. I've got the mix knob almost all the way down. Sometimes it's all the way up.
Roll it up.
And you can hear that effect. In this case, I didn't want that effect.
Roll it up.
Then we have Maximus. And what I'm using Maximus here for in this case is basically just stereo separation. So let me turn the compressors off because I'm not actually using them. But yeah, if I go to my low band, which in this case is about 200 hertz and below, 214, you'll notice I'm separating my low frequencies and I'm doing the opposite with my high frequencies. I'm putting them in mono. And I'm open to suggestions on this, but the reason why I do that is I kind of do the opposite with my drum sounds, and for the rest of the beat. So my drum sounds, my kick tends to be in mono, and my hats, I also tend to kind of merge a little bit, but they tend to be a little bit more separated than that. So the idea is if I do the opposite with the vocals, take the low frequencies and push them out to the sides, and high frequencies and put them on mono, my hope is now fewer things are competing with each other in those frequency ranges in those spaces, whether it be the mono space or the separated space. Like I said, I'm open to ideas with this. I'm also using this to low cut a little bit, but that's probably redundant because of the EQs that I've got going on anyway. The next Maximus preset I have is a de-esser. I'm using it as a de-esser. So essentially you can see this little band right here. And this is, I think I've got 3 of these going, where on the other one the band is a little bit over here, and then I adjust each one based on the vocals. You could probably get the same effect with one of these, but having 3 different ones, it's going to use more CPU and all that stuff, but you're going to have more control over where those S's are actually getting reduced and that sort of thing. But yeah, I'm using this Maximus preset. I think it's the de-esser preset, I could be wrong. And then I went in and just kind of messed with the settings to taste. But okay, so here's what the de-esser is doing.
I break it down, roll it up, smoke it, yeah, better.
So you can see I've got it to where it's mostly, sometimes, like in this case, a T sound will get caught as well in the de-esser. But really what I'm wanting is to get those sounds, those S sounds, and kind of reduce them by quite a bit.
I break it down, roll it up, smoke it, yeah, better days, better ways, feeling tough against the grain. Fix my pain, wish me luck, now I pray.
And this isn't the most accurate way to de-ess, it's just one way to de-ess. And all it's doing is reducing the volume of anything in this really skinny orange band right here. This is where some S's like to sit, and it's slightly different for everybody, which is why I have 3 different ones with 3 different bands. But it's slightly different for everyone. And all I'm doing is anytime the volume just in this region gets above a certain point, so in this case, this point, it just gets compressed down so that those S sounds are less present. That's really all a de-esser is doing. That's all this de-esser is doing. There are other ones that probably work differently, but this is one of the ones that comes with FL Studio. So yeah, I've got Maximus in one case just for stereo separation, and that's probably redundant actually. I could probably, well, anyway, it doesn't matter. The next thing I have is a super slept on but like super versatile plugin called Fruity Flanges. Just with the default settings you can get things to sound really, really cool and good. But if you want to put this on the main vocals, what I recommend is leaving the dry signal at 100% and then, you know, wet signal to taste, and then mix it almost all the way back so that you're not getting too flangery sounding. But I've noticed that if you add just a little bit of a flanger sound, or flange sound in this case, flanger sound to vocals and mix it in just barely, you can almost give the vocals like a, I don't want to say raspy, but it almost kind of sounds like a raspiness. I don't know, it's almost like a cool texture or saturation type sound that you add if you just barely mix it into vocals. Exactly, it's not the same thing as saturation or distortion or anything like that, but like it almost gives it that quality if you just barely mix it in a little bit. So Fruity Phalanges is definitely slept on for vocals, especially. So yeah, that's the next thing. And then I have a Fruity Compressor. I've got two different Fruity Compressors. This one has a slower attack and a fast release, and I'm pulling the threshold about 10 to 12 decibels down, and then pushing the gain up a little bit with a soft knee. And the other compressor is kind of the same, but the release and attack are kind of flipped. So I've got a fast attack and a slow release on the other one. Two different compressors. The other is the first one. And then this limiter is mostly to observe, but it's also to just make sure we're not going above 0. And also, I'm adding a little bit of saturation at this point. So as you can see, the saturation is being pulled down. So all that does is anything that comes up into this red-like space, it just adds a little bit of saturation to it.
I break it down, roll it up.
So it's not affecting everything. So like anything down here isn't really getting saturated. It's really only affecting that louder stuff. And then I have another patcher preset. I haven't started to use this. I may use this in this song. I may not. It's just a patcher preset with a whole bunch of different effects on it, so that I don't have to have a bunch of different effects all at the same time. And then, like I said earlier, I could probably have a lot of these effects on the same one, but okay, so that is the pre-vocal chain. Now we're sending everything that's in the pre-vocal chain to the main vocal chain. And the first thing I have in here is EQ. This changes based on the person, just like a lot of these things do. But with this guy's vocals, his name is Red26. He's on YouTube. He's super talented. Go check him out.
I break it down, roll it up, smoke it up.
So with him, I notice there's a lot of like sibilance, I think is the name for that. But like a lot of sounds up here in this high range. So with his vocals, I like to kind of dip down into that a little bit and take some of those out.
Fix my pain.
With some people's vocals, you want to boost this region because they're kind of lacking in this case. But with his particular microphone and his vocal quality, I like to dip that down just ever so slightly a little bit here.
I break it down, roll it up, smoke it up, better days.
Next thing in our vocal chain is a compressor. And this is what I was saying earlier. You could probably get away with only using one of these compressors. And I'm definitely open to learning more about like how the compressor settings affect a vocal. So far, from what I can tell, there's not too much of an audible difference. I'm sure there is a difference. I just can't hear it myself. But yeah, I'm definitely open to the idea of only using one compressor if somebody, has information regarding, like if you're having a fast attack versus a slow release or vice versa, typically better, or does that depend on the vocals? I would like to learn more. So if you have more information about that, feel free to throw that in the comments down below. And after my compressor, I have two more instances of Maximus. And so this is what I was talking about earlier. So I've got this one for stereo. This one was for de-essing. And then this one does, these two do more de-essing, okay? And you'll notice on the band for this one, it's from 9,500 to 8. So basically 8 to 9,500. So hertz. It's from about 5,500 to about 6,500. Okay, so let's let this run and see what it looks like.
I break better ways, feeling tough against the grain.
So I'm actually going to push a little bit of volume into this. We can get a little bit more compression.
I break it down, roll it up, smoke it up, better days, change, better way. To the sky.
Okay, and then I have another. It's essentially the same thing. The difference is this band is between those other two bands. So this one goes up to, let's move it up to about 10K. So 8.3. So we'll have this other one go to 8.3. Around there. Okay. That way we have 3 different de-essers in 3 slightly different ranges. They're all next to each other. And then we can adjust each one based on the vocals that are coming in and based on the S's that we're hearing. So let's look at this first one.
I break it down, roll it up, smoke it up, better days, better.
So I'm kind of getting some things that aren't S's in this one.
I break it down, roll it up, smoke it up, better days.
Yeah, so this one, I'm getting some sounds that aren't S's a little bit, so I'm actually going to back it off a little bit.
Big change, almost 28.
Okay, I'm going to go back and look at this one again.
I break it down, roll it up, smoky, better days.
So I've gone through and adjusted each one a little bit. So I tried to make it so that I'm really only getting the S sounds. I am going to be compressing some of those other sounds a little bit. That's why this isn't like it's not a perfect de-essing solution. And again, I'm doing this with 3 different instances of Maximus in slightly different bands. You could probably get a similar effect with one plugin. So if you know of like a free plugin that essentially does this, but better and on its own without you having to go through and adjust it, feel free to throw that in the comments. I'd be happy to check that out. But yeah, that's essentially my de-essing situation that's been finished. So I kind of start the de-essing here at the beginning, and then towards the end I kind of finish it off. And then I have another patcher preset. Again, I don't always use this. I just kind of turn it on when I need it. In this case, it's turned off. And then I have a mid-side EQ, okay, because I don't want too much coming through on, like I don't want anything in the sub frequencies coming in, well, anywhere really. And then on my mids, I tend to pull this band in a little bit more, just so I'm getting out of the way of things like kicks and 808s and that sort of thing.
I break it down, roll it up, smoke it up, better days, better ways. Feeling tough against the ground, making change.
Okay, and then I have a limiter.
I break it down, roll it
okay,
up.
And then I have a fruity peak controller. And the reason I have this is because when I'm mixing the vocals, what I want is I want certain frequencies in the beat to duck out when the vocals are coming in. I don't want them to duck completely. I just want them to duck a little bit. So what I've done is on just the beat. So this is just the beat. Okay, I have 2 bands here. I've got one where this PRS, which I believe stands for presence, it's around there, okay, and then I have another band that's around the 2K, a little bit below the 2K range, so 1600 is what it says here, and both of these are linked to this fruity peak controller on the vocals. So what I've done is every time the vocals play, so let me just play everything together and you can see this.
I break it down, roll it up.
The peak controller sees that. It goes, oh, okay, that's where it's peaking up, that's where the volume's going up. And so I've linked these 2 bands to that.
I break it down, roll it
so you can see every time the vocals come in, these just kind of bounce down a little bit and just dust that volume range, that frequency range in just a little bit. So as the vocals are playing, the idea is this little frequency range and this little frequency range are just kind of ducking down, okay?
I break it down,
but ideally it's not doing it so much that you really notice it. It's really just making sure that things are getting out of the way while things can also still be loud. And then I'm doing something similar with a fruity limiter. So on just the beat, I have a fruity limiter after the EQ, and I have the vocals side chained to the beat just a little bit. So when the vocals come in,
I break it down,
you can see the volume of the entire beat just ducks down just a little bit. And I have it so that it's just barely ducking it down. So it just kind of like the EQ, it's just barely pushing things down, just barely making room, because I don't want this to really be noticeable. I just want to make a little bit of space for the vocals so that everything can be just a little bit louder.
I break it down, roll it up, smoke it up, better days, better ways.
And something else I've done with the beat is you'll notice I've turned it down a little bit. I don't want the beat going all the way up to 0 decibels, which is how I mixed and mastered it essentially. I've got it turned down a little bit, so it's really coming up to 1 to 2 decibels below that. So, but it's still loud enough where everything's punchy and you can hear things. Okay, and that's essentially those are the chains for my vocals and how I mix my vocals with my beats. Something else I do is I like to go through and take out some of the breath sounds. You can do that with like a noise gate or something like that, but then you might introduce like popping and clicking if you don't do that the right way. I am aware that there are some plugins out there that will take away breath sounds for you, but I don't want to spend money, and so I just kind of do it manually. If you know of a free plugin that goes through and removes breath sounds for you, feel free to throw that down in the comments. But yeah, I'm going to go through, and I've already started this process before I started recording, and just kind of taking out some of the more noticeable ones. You don't have to take out every breath sound. Sometimes breath sounds are actually a good thing, and they sound organic and make the song sound like it's like actually being sung and played live and that sort of thing. So you don't necessarily want to take away everything, but like if you're hearing tons of gasping for air, you probably want to take some of those out, or at least reduce the volume so they're not quite as noticeable. But yeah, I'm gonna go through and do that.
Now I pray. what a big change.
So like right here, I heard like a
What a big, what a big, what a big.
Okay, so I'm gonna take this one out. Just cut around it. And then to avoid like popping and clicking, I've already got this set to smooth bleeding, so it helps with popping and clicking, but to really make sure, I like to manually do this. Just to make sure. So let's play it.
Now I pray, what a big change.
Yeah, so anything that's like noticeable like this, like that, I want to take that out. Okay, if it's just a little bit of a breath that you can kind of hear, I'm not too worried about it. In fact, like I said, that might be a good thing to leave in. But taking out breaths is also kind of an artistic choice. Some people like to leave all of them in for the reasons I said before. It can make it sound more organic. I like to take out the bigger ones, but that's really personal preference.
Fade all of the schemes, all that nigga.
Like this one's even visually noticeable. Like I can tell just by looking at this that this is a breath.
Happiness is what fade all of the schemes, all that negativity. Fade all of the schemes, all that negativity.
So in this case, I didn't actually cut all of it out. I actually left some of the sound in and then faded it so that it's very quiet. And this is one of those cases where taking out the breath completely isn't preferable. I didn't like the way that it sounded when it just kind of cut off, when his voice just cuts off here. I don't like the way that this sounds. It sounds like it doesn't sound natural to me. So what I did was I left some of this sound in, but then faded it so that his voice kind of trails off a little bit here. I don't know if you can hear that or not, but to me it makes a difference. This one, however, I want to remove because it's very noticeable and very gaspy. Like, who did that? Is what that sounds like. So this one may be another one where I don't take it out entirely. I think I'll just kind of fade this one out.
Into me. Now my soul is really free. Me, myself, and I smoking CB.
I think this is another good one to just kind of fade out.
Me, myself, and
because it's like in the middle of this sentence, and it's like, I don't know, I feel like just taking it out might sound weird. So just kind of fading the volume out for this little breath here.
Free. Me, myself, and I smoke free. Me, myself, and I smoking CBD. Who does red wanna?
So this is a gasp. I'm gonna take this one out.
Smoking CBD, who does red wanna be? In the mirror,
that's another gasp. Let's check that one out. You see what I mean? I don't know if I've shown enough of this or if I've edited enough of this footage out for you to be able to tell. But if you've done this enough, you can just look. This right here just looks like a breath, and then if you play it, it's a gasp. So that's what I'm taking out. And so I guess what my point is, if you've done this enough, just by looking, you can see where a lot of the breaths are going to be. And so you can save some time doing this. So this one is kind of gaspy, but I think this is another one where I'm not going to take it out completely. I'm just going to fade the volume.
Better days, better ways.
Okay. So there are a couple of breaths in here, but these like fit the aesthetic of what he's doing.
Get down, roll it up.
Like that.
Get down, roll it up.
Sounds like he's like, it sounds like it's part of the performance.
Get down, roll it
so I'm going to leave that little thing in there.
Get down, roll it up, smoke it up.
This one sounds like he's pulling in air for like to say the next thing. So I'm going to fade this one out. So hopefully you can see what I mean by some of these are kind of artistically fine the way that they are, and some of them just need to be adjusted a little bit, and then some sound like they're out of place. So like the really big gasp sounds, I want to get rid of most of those, but okay, and we've gone through and we've gotten rid of most of the breath sounds, and the ones that are like more subtle that we're okay with keeping, we basically just faded the volume out of that and didn't take it out completely. I'm gonna use the rest. Okay, and as far as the like vocal mixing, that's basically it. There are other things I'm gonna go through and do, like I'm gonna automate delay and reverb and that sort of thing on certain parts of the vocals that I want to accentuate and like bring attention to. I'll also go through and do something that gives like a demon-like tone to somebody's voice. So I'll find a section like this. So like, this may not stay in the actual song, but here's an example of some vocals I could accentuate with like a demon voice. And it also depends on the song, right? So this song may not lend itself to a demon voice kind of effect at all. But if you wanted to use it in this particular case, so this is what the vocal sounds like normally.
All that negativity.
So all that negativity, okay? If you wanted to make that kind of like a demon voice and make that section stick out, what you do is you duplicate it. So I duplicated it down here. Make this unique so that you're only affecting this. And then just pitch it down an octave and then play them at the same time. Same sound, if it's a vocal and you're playing the same sound at the normal range, and then you play the same thing pitched down an octave at the same time, it just makes it sound kind of like demony and kind of scary sounding like this. And you can do stuff like this and fade the volume in and out so that it really only comes in at certain points. But yeah, I'll go through and do stuff like this, and I'll automate delay and reverb and that sort of thing. And then I'll also go through and master the entire song. So once I have all that done, I will take my vocals and my beat and I will send everything to one channel, and then I will master it the same way that I've mastered like other beats and songs in other videos. So yeah, that's going to be about it for mixing vocals. I hope you learned something. And also, if you notice something that doesn't make sense or that I'm doing incorrectly, feel free to let me know in the comments down below. But yeah, that'll be it. Oh, and thanks again to Red for sending me these vocals for the song. If you haven't heard Red26 on YouTube, go check him out. He's super talented, and he's got a lot of really cool stuff. So.
I break it down, roll it up, smoke it up, better days, better ways, feeling tough against the grain, fix my pain, wish me luck, now I pray, what a big change, almost 20 years.